You idiot. If you want another bit of BS, here it comes. I only have one Frankenso and no spare parts, so it was always going to be a one-shot deal. Basically the first attempt is what I'm going to be stuck with. And this is what I got. The solder is probably perfectly adequate, but it just doesn't look good. You can get cheap eBay modules and they look better. It's not like I didn't do any testing. That's what number 9 was about. It was a little bit different, like I applied the paste by hand because I didn't have a stencil, and I used a fry pan on a stove, and after soldering I went with Kim tools because it was amazingly shiny. At least it did without the part. With the part, this first one didn't fare that well, but all the others look very good. So why now are the joints on my Frankenso not so good? So how the hell did we go from shiny to average? Back to testing. I'm going to run the paste selection test again, but closer to what I used on the Frankenso. Basically with parts and in an oven. You should try lining up a Frankenso stencil on a Frankenstein without fiducials, because that sucked. Chem tools first. Put it on a scraper and spread it on 5 sets of holes. Redux is next. They should get rid of all X words, like they got rid of Pluto. If it's not big enough, it doesn't exist. It's not even pronounced with an X. Xylophone is Z, xylene is Z, even zebra's Z. Next is the redux, mixed with my good flux. It was a bit dry last time, so I'm just adding a tiny bit more flux. Leave a gap and next 5 holes. Back to the 3-year-old dried out mechanics. I think this stuff has had it because you have to mix IPA with it every time you want to use it. It's pretty bad. This is the Chem tools. Redux with flux. Mechanics with IPA. 3 capacitors per 5 pad group. The heat profile for the Frankenso board was put it in the toaster oven, only turn on the bottom element, then wait the 15 minutes for the paste to turn to solder. A usual solder heat profile has about 5 to 10 minutes of heat soak at about 75% of the temperature to melt the solder, but my toaster oven is so slow the 15 minutes kind of accounts for the heat soak, so you can pretty much ignore it. I shouldn't be changing so many parameters in one test, but I changed the heat profile for this one. Instead of turn on cold and turn off at 170 degrees C after 15 minutes, I'm going to add an extra 5 minutes heat soak at 140 degrees C and then take it all the way up to 200 degrees C. And this took about 30 minutes in total. The paste started going at around 160 degrees C. The finger in the bottom corner is 190 degrees C. Another 30 seconds and it hit 200 degrees C, and that's when I turned it off. This was the Chem tools. Looks like the bottom corners didn't take to the pad. This one looks okay. More concave but probably okay. Redux looks better. They all seem to look better, which sucks because this thing is a bit hard to apply because it seems a bit dry. Redux with good flux. It does seem a fraction shinier with the good flux. This one didn't turn out great, but that might be residual solder from when I used it before. Mechanics with the IPA. I think I better toss this mechanics because it's been IPA'd too many times. It's probably broken down the flux. I should have really bought some fresh stuff to test. Well, that didn't tell me much, but if I was pressed I suppose the redux is a bit better. It wicks the pads better and seems to have a higher volume solids. Basically the higher solder and less flux makes a more fuller joint. The brand of solder didn't do much, so was it one of the other parameters in the Imbecile 9 test that made the solder shiny? Like, was it excess paste due to uncontrolled hand delivery? Or was it due to using a stove instead of an oven? Hand application of the Chem tools. Notice how there's more than you actually need. And slap some parts on there. Well, that don't look good. There was old thermal glue on the pad so the solder didn't take. Take 2. It looks better with a greater volume of solder, but I don't know if this Chem Tools is that good because the second and third didn't wick out to the full pad size. As an experiment, I did that all again, but with the Redux, and it seems better. But the problem is, it's nearly impossible to hand deliver in a syringe. It's just so high solder and low flux that it's very hard to flow through small nozzles. And if you are able to get through a small nozzle with the massive amount of pressure needed, it doesn't stick because of the low flux count. Other experiments was to apply some good flux on the old solder joints, put it back in the oven and then see if they become shiny like it does with a soldering iron. Absolutely no difference. Apply extra Chem Tools to fatten up the joint. I don't know if that was a success, but the fuller joints do look less wrinkly. I suppose we can conclude from that test that more paste makes it look better, which you can't do anything about if you're using a stencil. It's like the stencil is designed to put the minimum down to save money in manufacturing. The last parameter we have to check is stove over oven. Same stencil test as before. Chem Tools first. Chem Tools with stencil. Redux. Redux with stencil. Remove some overspill. Chem Tools freehand. Redux freehand. What a total bastard. Place parts on the Redux. Place parts on the Chem Tools. Place parts on the Redux stencils. Place parts on the Chem Tool stencils. In the frying pan on the stove and the lid on top. Pop the lid at 175 degrees C and it's soldered. You can usually tell by the smoke coming out. Chem Tools on the front and Chem Tools on the back. Redux on the front and Redux on the back. Looks like more of the same. Chem Tools freehand paste. Redux freehand paste. If anything, the extra paste makes it look better, not the stove or the oven. If you want the back side of the parts, this is the Chem Tools and this is the Redux. Looks like there's big problems if you've got too much paste. For curiosity, I'm going to do a blob spread test. Get some 1mm plastic with a hole punched in it and use it as a stencil. Chem Tools first. Redux second. I fucked it, it's out of focus. And then I dropped the stupid thing, so I had to do it again. But you get the idea. The Chem Tools after I dropped it. The Chem Tools redo. It spreads out a lot, like there's a lot of flux in it, but then the solder doesn't wick out to where the flux is. It's like the flux is crap and not cleaning. You can see it better on the dropped one. This is the Redux after I dropped it, not much to see. With the Redux, wherever the flux went, the solder went with it, so it wicks better. I've got some mechanics paste on the way, but that's 2 weeks away and that's not going to make it in time, so I'm switching to Redux for the other side of the Frankenso. Just on a side note, this red SMD glue is still wet after 7 days, so it looks like it doesn't cure unless it's in an oven, at least not very fast. You have been watching Captain Pedantic.